Good morning and welcome to Onward in Love and Caregiving. It's Friday, August 26th, and I'm so glad to see each and every one of you. I'm Greg Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of GJP International, and here in New York, I have the great privilege of serving as the chief advisor to the CEO of Emblem Health for family caregiving. Now, you see Gene with us, so you know it's the last Friday of the month, and Gene has done it again. He is the one who, as our creative director, continues to invite and to research so many wonderful people. And this morning, we actually have a colleague from Emblem Health who's going to be joining us. Gene, how is life in New York?
Well, good morning, Greg, and thank you for having me in New York. And because this is August, this is the month where we celebrate the Independence Day of Indonesia. And this is the first time we celebrate the Independence Day in New York City. So that's the reasons why we wear batik again this morning.
Exactly. Well, we shall say Dirgahayu to all of our dear friends in Indonesia who will be watching this. They're getting ready to go to bed, but they usually watch in our evening time. So anyhow, wonderful.
Yes, so Greg, because we will have a very special guest this morning, and as you mentioned that you work together in Emblem Health, and we talking frequently about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the guest that we will have this morning is a perfect example how to implement the DEI, not only in Emblem Health, but also in daily life. Because as you will know him later on, that he's making some projects that really outstanding, and at the same time also create like the men's group, try to involve other men's to become more open about how they try to face the challenge life, and talking about the inclusion. So this men's group that being created is just like open for all of the men instead of their background.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. And yes, it's our joy to have with us this morning Coach Nick. You've got a couple of slides, and then we'll invite him. Let's take a quick look at those. We won't read them all fully. Oh, yeah, now we can expand that. There is Coach Nick Papadopoulos.
Coach Nick, or Nicholaos Papadopoulos, is our special guest this morning, and he's an notable and reputable author, speaker, and executive coach, and he's been doing these activities for so many years. And like it's focusing on the organizational and personal transformation, especially on the men and inclusions and employee engagement and leadership. And I think he's also doing that one not only in the health but also in other corporations.
He is a very busy man. There we go.
So it's a privilege for us to have him this morning to join us, Greg. And as you know, that he's been successfully running a men's group for over 15 years. And one of the group is called the Youth of Disruptions, that not only try to have some kinds of internal communications, discussions, but what makes it special is they are working on the fundraisings in 2018 in Haiti, the Heart School in Haiti, and they are able to raise almost $200,000 for the school since 2018, which is very
amazing.
Yes. So without any waiting, so let's just invite Coach Nick.
All right, Coach Nick, come and join us.
All right. Hello.
There you are.
Yes, hi.
wonderful to have you with us. And I'm glad you disrupted the introduction. I'm so excited to have you with us today. Jean, thank you for introducing and doing the slides, and we'll see you a little bit later.
Yes, and have fun.
Thank you, Jane. Happy
Thank
Independence Day.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, let's first find out about Nick. Can you just give us a little bio, a little background, and how we got to know each other, actually, which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned, Greg, that we're colleagues at Emblem Health. So that's where we met originally.
Yes.
And we've established a connection and a friendship. So I appreciate you inviting me here on the show this morning. My background, I'm born and raised in New York City. I'm the son of immigrants. I do both corporate work and personal development work. I know we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah.
But my work really has always been about inspiring people, inspiring teams to live life purposefully and to transform the world. That's my North Star. That's my purpose. And so everything that I do, either in the corporate space, around leadership development, culture and employee engagement, talent management, or in the personal development space, like you mentioned in the opening about a lot of the work that I've done with running men's groups, running men's retreats, all of that, again, always aligns with my higher purpose, which is to inspire people, inspire teams to live life purposefully and to transform the world.
And I love what you've just said. And I just have to echo and to say how fortunate you and I are. And it's something I've talked about so often.
Right.
Who would have ever thought that an insurance company in New York City would invite a minister to spend 22 years in the middle of it,
right,
doing family caregiving?
That's great. Yeah.
I mean,
awesome.
That is the gift of the corporation and its leadership, is
right.
Each of us is allowed to be who we are, bring our passions, because we're looking at the whole person. It's not just about paying a bill for a surgical procedure. It's the person that we're looking at. And I'm always overwhelmed. A few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, actually, we had Sarah Kaplan Levinson, who is magnificent in a social worker and in care management. But again, her world is such a part of it. And it's something I like to state because I'm very grateful about it. And it's something that I talk about wherever I go. Am I Emblem? Am I GJP? It doesn't matter. I am simply a child of the divine, doing what I believe I was sent down here to do, as you are doing, helping to transform the world one moment at a time and one person at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I love, and you must forgive me, but I just love it. In your write-up here, I'm reading a piece of it. Author, speaker, executive coach, facilitator, consultant, but here's my favorite, disruptor. Let's talk about that. I mean, if that doesn't get their attention, nothing will.
Right. So I am committed to being a disruptor. And I say that from the place of being a responsible disruptor. And for me, disruption is really about disrupting the automatic, right? The automatic way of thinking, the automatic way of being, the automatic way of doing. When you think of teams in an organization, right? Often you'll hear a narrative like, well, this is just how we always do things, or this is just how it is here, right? Or even in our personal relationships, right? My partner, my partner, he or she is fill in the blank, right? Or there goes my kids again, right? Fill in the blank. And I do believe that we get into these automatics. And when we do get into that space where we just sort of operate, automatically, without thinking, without being aware, I think that we end up really losing our vitality. I think we lose our creativity. We lose we lose really our sense of being alive, our experience of being alive. If you think of an arena, right, where you have, the court, if you will, where the games are played, and then you have the stands with the fans. I think that when you're in an automatic space, you're in the stands, you're observing the game, you're even, like most fans, at times you kind of check out, you kind of doze off, right? You get a little tired or sleepy, right? You might get distracted. That's all normal. There's nothing right or wrong about that, but that's often what happens when you're sitting in the stands as an observer, sort of observing the game. If you're in the game itself, in the arena, right, it's because you've disrupted the automatic and you're now having the opportunity to make choices from an awakened place, from a place of awareness, right? So the disruption is, I say it's responsible disruption, because it's not meant to be disruptive just for kicks and giggles, although that could be fun too, right? I mean, that we can, be, troublemakers every once in a while, but ultimately the disruption is really about, are there other choices here? What are the other choices? What are the other ways of making this happen, right? Whatever this may be, right? So disruption for me is really, really critical.
I just love that. And it's so important because it just gets our mind saying, I mean, you said it right at the beginning. This is how we've always done it. So
right.
what?
Right.
Oh, what? Is there not another way to do it? And it's not.
I was going to say, my experience with people and with teams is that often, we set our own limiting beliefs, right? We set our own limitations, and then we convince ourselves, and then we convince anybody else who's willing to listen to us, right?
Yeah.
And we're enrolling ourselves and enrolling others in smallness, right? Rather than, well, what else? What if? What? Right? Or why not? Right? And really operating from that place. And again, I think that when we operate from a place of disrupting that automatic, I do believe we have the experience of being alive. And to me, that's everything. Now being alive doesn't guarantee fulfillment. It doesn't guarantee you're going to quote unquote win or get what you want. However, it does give you the experience of being able to influence, right? To be better connected, to learn, to grow, and have a better opportunity of getting what you want, right? When you're in that awakened, alive place.
And that's so important. I loved when you said when we begin limiting, our circle gets smaller, and
yes,
our audience knows that I'm one who, it's an old gospel hymn, but I keep talking about make the circle wider. There's room for all. It's the good, it's all in there. It's that unitive thinking. Dualism is fine, good and bad, and those sorts of things for part of our life. But we're emotional, we're physical, and we're spiritual human beings. We got to make that circle wider.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all part of it. That is so exciting to me. Now, you have become, and I was thrilled with this. Gene and I talked of it at length. You began working with men's groups.
Right.
Based upon some of your own story, would you be willing, because I'm always interested in the world of caregiving, there is no one who has ever been a guest on this program who came and said they were just sitting around one day and this idea came to them. No, they were a caregiver and they were about to pull their hair out and they said there has to be a way to do this. And after the caregiving situation ended or changed, they then said, no, this is a piece that needs to be there, and they went about it. So I know that that's true in your case, which is why I love the story of how did you get into the men's group? And then I want to talk about your podcast.
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking, and I'm happy to share and and to elaborate. I'd say about 15 years ago, I went to see a therapist, and I went to see him at the time because I was really looking to shift my relationships around men, how I related to men and how I interacted with men, regardless if they identified as gay or heterosexual or however they identified, just men in general. I wanted to shift my relationship. Part of that conversation also included my relationship with my dad, who had passed at the time, right? And I felt like there was an opportunity for me to have a different relationship with him and with men. Now, just for background, um, on the surface, I probably occurred to most people as a healthy, empowered, functioning male interacting that way with other males. Meaning, I was in college, I was a president of my fraternity. I played, sports, baseball, basketball, volleyball. I was in the locker room, if you will, very comfortable with other men. I was always considered sort of a leader amongst, my circle of friends, right? So on the surface, I occurred as he's a guy's guy, as somebody might say, right? Or he can, he's relatable to other men, pretty easily. Inside, there was always immense turmoil, an immense amount of being uncomfortable. I would definitely be the person that would raise his hand and say, I always felt closer and more comfortable with opening up to women and having women as best friends and having women as confidants. I just didn't trust men. And so again, going back to my point a few minutes ago, I came to my then therapist and said, look, I really want to, I'm really committed to changing my relationship with men, specifically how I trust them or how listen, just as a sidebar, when we talk about trust, when we say, hey, I'm not a trusting person, or I don't trust this particular person or this group, it always starts with us, right? It's really about, do I trust myself inside of that or those dynamics, right? So that's how I started. I really started for selfish reasons. I started my first men's group with this particular therapist, who, by the way, didn't even want to do a men's group. He had all kinds of stories about men. He said, men don't commit. Men will always find reasons not to show up to our sessions. Men are always traveling. Men don't want to like sit in a space for a time and share and all that. So I had to chase him. I remember, probably 6 to 9 months. I mean, I was constantly, and I'm a nudge. I'm a good old fashioned professional nudge, right? So, finally he, conceded and said yes. And, and then, we started our first men's group, and, that's led to me, facilitating and leading men's groups throughout the last 15 years in, different forums. I do men's retreat weekends. Right now, I currently run 2 groups that meet every 2 weeks. It's a group of about 15 in each group. But what I found out, to go back to the original point about, the original group when we started the first one 15 years ago, as I said, I went there for selfish reasons. And I realized sitting in the room that first 2 sessions, I realized, shoot, these guys are in the same boat I'm in, regardless of how they identify, because we had, all the groups I've been in have had a mix of, men who identify different ways, again, heterosexual, gay, whatever it may be. So regardless of what, of your sexual orientation, regardless of your ethnicity, how old, grandfather, single, under 30, divorced, married, the experiences that, the men that I've encountered over the 15 years, starting with that first group, were all very similar. I mean, different content, right? Like different, situations, but the experiences that we've had as men have been very, very similar.
And blessedly, you have been the vehicle to say it, because I know exactly where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Because as the viewers are well aware, I'm openly gay, and I'm also someone who's been in recovery for a very long time.
Right.
And I'm always amazed when I sit in the rooms of AA and what have you. And I know your story, you know mine, even if we can't speak the language. So I've gone to meetings all over the world where I'll never forget. I felt we needed to get into the prisons in Bali and help the
Right.
recidivism. And
Right.
I suddenly got there and I said, oh, but I don't speak Bahasa enough to speak the thing.
Right.
And so I looked at my driver, who is a very faithful Muslim and never had a drink in his life. I said, what's the word for drink? And he said, minum. I said, all right. So I stood up in front of this group of about 40 men
Right.
in a very, very hot prison. And I said, Saya Bapa Greg, I'm Mr. Greg. Saya, minum, 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 boom. And they all roared. We had a conversation going. Because when somebody's willing to speak
Yeah.
from their heart,
Yep.
we aren't those unique creatures.
Right.
And I love the fact of what you're sharing, because I had the same experience in AA. At first, I thought, oh, I couldn't possibly go to a men's meeting. And then I
Right.
realized there were some that were all gay men. And I started that way. And
Right.
then finally, I said, no, I need to go to an inclusive one where that wasn't even an issue.
Right.
And I can't tell you what that has done for my understanding on the very same issue that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't as comfortable. I too, it's an interesting thing. My best friends for a long point had been women. I was more
Right.
comfortable relating to them. When you said that, I thought, I'll raise my hand. Wow.
Yeah. Right.
And how wonderful it is. Now, you've also been doing, at the end of the program, we're going to give contact information
Sure.
so that people who would be interested in finding out more about the groups and specifics about it, are you doing them in person now or are they online?
They're both. So one group was it was more local in the New York metro area. And so traditionally, so that particular group's been around for about 7 years and used to meet in person. When COVID happened, we obviously moved to offline, and now it's hybrid, right, where we meet, one session is online, one session is in person. And then we do a retreat once a year for a weekend. The other group, the second group that I started during COVID, actually, so it's about 2 years old. And that group it has men from around the country, so that's exclusively online, but we do 2 retreats a year for a weekend where we physically get together. But it's really interesting, that second group, the way that was formed. So if you rewind the clock back to when COVID started in March of 2020, right, sort of when things really hit the fan, as they say, I had scheduled a men's weekend program, a public workshop, and then we had about 25 men registered for it, in New York City. It was the last weekend of March, and obviously, pandemonium broke out, in mid-March of 2020 with COVID,
Yeah.
right? And folks were, canceling programs, shutting down, etc. So we were hosting our workshop in New York City at a center, which closed down. And so what we decided to do was, we said, look, everyone's got that weekend already covered. They've got the time already allotted. Things are a little freaky, a little hairy. Why don't we do like a 4-hour program on that Saturday? This was the last weekend of March, just to provide support. And then, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, COVID will be over in a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and then we can reschedule this, public weekend workshop. And so we did this 4-hour workshop online that Saturday, with all these men who had registered. And at the end of the, as we were sort of wrapping up, right, I basically said, hey, we'll be in touch over the next few weeks. Hopefully things, turn, for the better. And then we'll be, you'll be hearing from us as far as a new date and all that. One of the men said, hey, I don't really have another outlet or have a healthy outlet for me to go and talk to others and to connect and to share and to listen and to express what I'm feeling, which right now is a lot of fear, especially again at that time. And, could we do this more often, even though I know we're planning to reschedule this this,
Yeah.
in-person weekend. And so I did, on the fly, I did a poll, and said, how many of you would like to do this again, between now and the time that we schedule the in-person workshop again? And it was 100%, it was obviously anonymous, but I mean, out of the group of, whatever it was, 20, 25 people that we had on, everybody said, let's do this.
That is marvelous.
And that's how the second group started, which was, it really started by accident, if you will, because it was meant to be a public workshop that, by the way, we never ended up doing because COVID obviously lasted a lot longer than a few weeks. Definitely don't hire me for the CDC, because I definitely, wouldn't do them any favors. But I do think it shows or it provides a good example, right? That men need a place, to be taken care of and to take care, right, in a more vulnerable, authentic, intimate way. And I love that. I thought it was really courageous when that gentleman said, I don't have another outlet. I'm feeling a lot of fear, which, by the way, is a big deal for a man to admit, right?
Yeah.
That they're scared, right? Or don't have all the answers. Can we do this? Can we create a space where we can come together, lean in and lean on each other? And I thought that was really, really beautiful.
What I love, and of course, it's where my heart goes every time I hear this, is you're caring for one another.
Yeah, exactly.
And so often in the world, for so long, I mean, it was either the women in the family, it was the gay child, whether it was gay or lesbian.
Yep.
Those were the ones who did the caregiving.
Yep.
And it was a number of years ago. I haven't shared this one with you, but it's on my YouTube channel. A gentleman came to me. He was introduced by some other clergy whom I knew. He wrote a play entitled The Actual Dance. And it's a metaphor for his journey in his wife's breast cancer. But he and I have had the privilege of doing it. We did like 40 performances off Broadway, and I mean, he would do the performance. It's a one-man show, but then I would do the talk back at the end of it. But he's played this now all over the nation, and that was the thing that was so marvelous. Was here we had a man telling his story. And you are giving that opportunity. And let me just say right here on this, if there's ever an opportunity when you're with your groups, where you'd like me to come and talk about men as caregivers, I would love to do that. Because
absolutely,
one of the topics I often speak about is name it, meaning put a name to this wonderful task that people are doing, family caregiver. It's not just something you have to do. It's a big job. It's a 24/7. And there are many faces. It's not just seniors like me. And I mean, it's men, it's women. Frankly, I became very involved with the criminal justice system in a motion picture that was done called The Angola Project, where it was the high security prison. And who were the caregivers? It was men caring for men. And what was the gift? It was the redemptive power of caregiving. Our lives were changed because no one could go in. They could, there was no way anyone could go in to help. So they had to be the persons. And of course, as they began to care to one for the other, all the fear and the masks that had been there for so long.
Yeah, I shared with you offline, one of our core values in all my men's groups that I have incorporated and brought present is being in service or being in contribution or being giving. We call it contribution. Most folks call it being in service. But that is one of our core values. And being in service allows us to care for others, right? And what's really powerful about that is, I had a mentor of mine who once said, love the relationship more than yourself. And I looked at him, what do you, really? Do I not get to take care of myself? And he said, well, he goes, I got really good news for you. I said, okay, good. I like good news. He said, when you love the relationship more than yourself, guess who's included in the relationship? You are, right? And so part of being in service, yes, there's the element of I took care of you, right? Or I took care of, that situation, right? I made that person feel more human or whatever, right? I had them feel safe. I had them feel whole, right? I had them feel less alone, right? Whatever, all of those wonderful things that we could create for somebody else or for a group. And guess what? As we're in that journey, as we're in that experience, we're also getting the goodies as well, right? We're also getting the lessons and the growth opportunity. We're also getting to see, what we want to change about ourselves, even, right? Where we're stoppable, or where we may have limiting beliefs as well, or what our judgments may be, or our prejudices may even be, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I think having service or being in contribution is one of our core values has been the game changer, to be very frank with you, with our men's group, because I think that, as I said, ultimately we're learning and growing by actually giving, right, and caring, and at the same time, I think that I think for men especially, it also allows us to get out of our heads. I think men, and I'm making a generalization, of course, but I do think that men tend to, sort of live in, often you'll say, men go to their cave. Their cave is their head, right? They're living in their head, right? That's the cave.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the world isn't happening in our heads. The world is happening out here, and so I think that when we're in service, it actually does force us to be out of our heads. I studied Kabbalah
Right.
many years ago, and in Kabbalah they talk about this very distinction, which is, these are my words or my interpretation of what they taught, but when in doubt, look out. And what I mean by that, or just to peel that back one layer, in Kabbalah, they talk about, when you're frustrated, or when you're angry, or when you're down, or when you're in your cave, the fastest way to get out of it is to be in service of someone else, is to make a difference for someone else. And by the way, that can sometimes just be sending a text message to someone saying, "Hey, Greg, thanks for having me on your show this morning. Hey, Greg, I really appreciate connecting with you today." It doesn't have to be something grandiose like raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yes, that can be part of it too, but it really can just be a simple hello or a thank you. Often that's really what's needed.
No, it's so true. And in that service of caring for another, we realize we need to care for ourselves so that we can give from our abundance.
Yeah. Yep.
I have often said, as I've talked to some church groups, you can't sing "Lean on Me" and then both fall over.
Right.
That's not what this is about.
Right.
And so that, it was resonating in my head. But now, if we wanted a segue, I couldn't think of a better one than this conversation we've just had. I want you to talk to us about the project in Haiti and the Heart School. I think that is extraordinary.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. So a few years ago, one of the men in my men's group came to me and said, do you want to raise the stakes, right? So yes, being in service, being in contribution is one of our core values, and we've done some really wonderful things, right? Where we were raising awareness, raising money, and all that. And he said, "Do you want to do something even bigger?" And I'm raise my hand. Yes, I'm a disruptor, right? That's part of the disruption, right? So
Let's do it.
He was disrupting, right? Because he's saying we're doing X, Y, and Z, and that's all wonderful. And guess what? We could continue to do that, and it would be wonderful. And let's just disrupt for a moment, and let's operate from an awakened place. And he had gone down to Haiti. I think at the time it was like 10 years earlier during the earthquake, and he got connected to this school, the Heart School in Haiti. And so he said, do you want to do a service trip as a men's group down there? And so what happened is we we connected with the executive director of the school. They needed funds and resources to build their first ever library. The school has about 250 students. It's really a beautiful oasis of beautiful kids, wonderful community.
It's not a medical school. I just wanted for
No.
the audience, when you hear heart school, it's not a
Oh, right.
medical school.
No,
it's children.
It's
Young
children. It's from kindergarten, and through our fundraising, actually, the school now goes through high school, actually. So
Fantastic.
so it's about 250 students, and what we ended up doing was we raised $35,000 to help them build their first library, and 23 of us went down there for a service trip, which where we basically contributed by helping to start the construction of the library. We didn't finish it while we were there, but we helped start the construction of it. And since then, that library has been built. Now, since then, we've raised, as Jean pointed in opening remarks from the slide, we've raised a bunch of money. We did a pre-COVID, we did a casino night fundraiser in New York City where we raised about $60,000. Again, that was to help build their first high school and their classrooms for the high school, scholarships. The money that we've raised goes to a lot of scholarships for students, which is really important, actually, because it helps the students down there provides them with 2 meals a day, health care, which is a big deal for the kids down there. So, similar to what I said about 5 minutes ago, as much good as we've done, right, and as much value as we've added, the kids and the opportunity to serve the kids has, I think, we've actually received so much more from the endeavor, from the relationship. When you're planning a service trip to another country, when you're raising money, trust me, all your fears rise up, and are front and center, and it's messy, right?
Totally.
Because think about it, right? All of our beliefs about money come up, our beliefs about the relationships that we have, right? I want to go ask my brother, sister, mom, dad, partner, friend, neighbor, colleagues at work, for money, or to tell them I'm going to Haiti. And then, some people push back, some people don't call back, but it brings up so much stuff, right? And I think that's, you talk about gifts. I mean, the fact that, all this gets, plopped up on the table, this big messy, plop of stuff. That's why I say, I think that even though we've done a lot of really good work for the school down in Haiti, it has transformed each and every man, in our group, in different ways. Again, it could be our relationship to money, our relationship to specific people in our lives, our willingness to, what are our prejudices?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. It's, it really just, talk about disruption. That was like a major disruptor in all of our lives.
Oh, but it's so exciting to hear it. I've had the privilege of doing a lot of that sort of thing in Southeast Asia. And all I can say is yes, yes, yes. I was just looking at some photos of a church that I helped to start in Flores, way out in Nusa Tenggara. And all the funny things we go through. And after the church was built, my late husband had died after we were together 41 years. And I thought, Indonesia had been very precious to him. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to have an organ for the church,
Right.
So I made contact, and one of my staff, and I said, do they have a musical instrument? He said, oh, no. I said, well, so he went and got the organ. I sent him the money, and we got the organ there. I had never thought, of course, they didn't have any electricity to plug it in. So the generator cost me more than the organ. I have never done anything in my life that I love more. But those are the things we just go through, the things we take for granted.
Right. Yeah,
The
no,
only
absolutely.
the only thing I do have to say on that little story is, God does provide, because I'd never thought about, well, does anybody play the organ? Well, once I got the generator there and the organ was there, a child literally walked in and went to the organ and started to play.
That's awesome. That's great.
God, you do the work, God provides, and He takes
Yeah,
that mess that you put on the table and
yeah,
says,
right, right,
well, let me see what we can do. And God on this program is however you define that. I'm very 12 step when I say that. So
right.
it's so inclusive and so exciting. But I could go on and on and on with you, Nick. It's wonderful. And all I'm going to say is we're going to definitely say to be continued, because
Great.
and by the way, the actual dance, what brought my heart when the gentleman who wrote it, and I'm having a senior moment because he's one of my best friends, Sam Simon. I
Hmm.
couldn't think of Sam's name. He is a Reformed Jew
Okay.
and very devout. And in the middle of the script, and he can't sing either, and I've said it to his face, he sings the Mishaberach.
Okay.
And I looked at him and I said, I'll do whatever you want. It was so wonderful because here we had, this fabulous man telling his story,
Right.
and it's done so much good for so many.
That's
Just
great.
as what you're doing. Now, let's see if we can get Gene back.
Okay.
Oh, I see it. There you are.
He's
Well,
back.
Yes, I'm back, and I'm enjoying the conversations, and it really strikes me because it feels that, oh, okay, I'm also a disruptor. I mean, it's just like but just like Greg says that, well, I feel more comfortable to have like women as a best friend. But in the
Hmm.
end, he married to the man anyway. So I mean, it's just like, okay, so I disrupt his life. But
Yeah.
it's just like what you just said to us, Nick, that men need a place to be taken care of in more intimate way. So I think that happens to
Yeah.
everyone because we all men, I mean, just like always have like the vulnerable side, and being in a relationship, it's much more, like it grows the opportunity to have, like loving the relationship more than you are because,
Right.
well, my favorite quote is always from Helen Keller that alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And I think that's the kind
Yeah.
of things that
Yeah.
your dance group were doing to the IT school. I mean, it's just like, and
Yeah.
having that one, I mean, it's just like it gives a good feeling to everyone that hey, we can make a difference to others and makes everyone just like love themselves more than it happens before.
Yeah. I mean, one of our other core values is redefining what it means to be a man today. And not that I claim to have the answer to that, right? However, together, as a group, as a collective, we explore that conversation. And one of the outcomes from those conversations and explorations is about being better at allyship, being allies to underrepresented people and groups, being inclusive. Men have a reputation of wanting to protect, right? However, in years past or in older generations, often it was done in an unhealthy sort of macho, masculine, patriarchal way, right? And so for us, it's again about disrupting all that and saying, how do we honor what's natural to us, which is to protect, right? And to take care, and do it not from a patriarchal place, but do it from a place of inclusivity and allyship and from a place of expansion, right? Like, how do we have everybody? There's enough. I think you said something, Gene, earlier that there's enough room, for everybody. I mean, I think that's very much what we talk about is how do we make room for everyone? How do we make it safe for everyone? Because again, when we make it safe for everyone, right, and when everyone around us, especially a person or group that's been underrepresented, when that person or group feels or has the experience of being seen and heard, we're going to get the benefit also on top of it. I mean, it's the right thing to do, right? Sort of the divine thing to do, to take your word from before. And it's also benefits us, because the world becomes a better place when everybody feels safe. When everyone feels safe, they become self-expressed, right? And when people are self-expressed, they're bringing their best versions forward. And so a lot of our work is really about how do we create that space for the people around us so that everybody around us is actually excelling, not just us.
And I love it. Going through my head now is one phrase that I use again and again: pieces of you and pieces of me put us all back together.
I like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I use that. I think it originally came from program, but I love it because it's pieces of you and pieces of me put us all back together. And what a gift. Now,
Yeah.
Gene, you have 2 more slides to share with us. Our slide man there.
Right. So, yes,
I
It
know
takes
that's
several
logical.
slides to get my name on there because my name is so long.
Well, we worked on it.
yes. Okay. So this just like how you just mentioned that one, Nick, that you live purposefully, transfer the world, and it's just like you say that most of the times it comes to the understanding, like boys don't cry, and I mean just like the common understanding that. So when many men's, or even just like not only men's, I mean just like those who provide the caregiving for the men's would like to talk more about you. So I believe that they can contact you in a different way,
Hmm.
Instagram, Twitter, even just like directly on your LinkedIn profile and your website. So I mean,
Yep.
just and it gives the opportunity for all the people, not only here in New York City, but also to other audience outside of the United States. So feel free just to contact you and just be themselves. I mean, just like it's not a problem. I mean, it's just like uh, like nothing to worry that everybody has the same problem and you're not
Hmm.
alone. That's
You,
the point of the
you're not alone. Exactly. That's a theme in caregiving for all of us. That's perfect, Donnie or Jean. And I'm so grateful that you left it up there toward the end. And we will put it up when we mounted this on our various platforms.
right.
I sound now like I know what I'm talking about. I don't, but Jean is our creative director.
Right.
And now, first of all, I want to thank you, Nick, for being our coach and honoring us with this conversation.
Thank you.
I have learned so much. I'm so alive. The day is just beginning, but I feel like I have been blessed with a full day.
Yeah.
And we look forward to sharing it. We'll look forward to continuing our conversations and finding ways that we can be of mutual service because
Great.
that would be very exciting. And Jean, thank you for creating these once a month. I love these so much. And to each of you in our audience, I want to thank you. I want to invite you to share this, share the caregiving. And always our motto and our theme is onward in love and caregiving. Namaste.
Thank you.
God bless. We'll see you real soon. Thank you.